Welcome, everyone. We're here to do another desktop migrators class. This class is designed for people who are either moving from desktop, QuickBooks Desktop, to QuickBooks Online, or they're considering moving from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. Today's class is only going to focus on payroll. Now, when I say payroll, I mean QuickBooks integrated payroll. We're not going to go over anything to do with any of those third-party software. We're only talking about what if we're using QuickBooks and QuickBooks built-in payroll. What are we doing today? Well, we're going to start in QuickBooks Online in a company file that we're presuming you have already transferred from desktop to online. We're presuming that as a starting point. In fact, we've already had a whole series of courses that have led up to this point, showing you how to do that transfer and other things to consider. Today, we're just picking up with payroll. And so we're going to show you what data transfers, and it's a lot. And then we'll go through and we'll audit. It's always a good idea to triple check in payroll. We'll audit all of our info, what has come in, maybe how to identify something that didn't come over, and any other steps that we might need to just make sure it's right. We'll go through and do our audit. And then we're even going to set up a new employee. You're eventually going to need to do that. We'll run you through it here as well. But hopefully, all of our current employees have transferred along with us into our QuickBooks Online company file. We'll then put some time sheets. We'll put time into QuickBooks for our employees, and we'll show you how to run payroll. Once we're done with running payroll, we're going to show you how to track, well, better yet, how QuickBooks tracks for you your tax and non-tax liabilities, how it tracks those forms, and how it helps you pay any liabilities. One thing to think about, when you're doing this for yourself, not for this class, not for right now, but when you get ready to go into payroll, this is what you should have in front of you. Your employees' W-4s filled out. Most of that data should come through desktop, but have it in front of you just in case. Your year-to-date payroll, that data should have come through the transfer, but you're going to want something to compare it to, right? Always triple check payroll. And again, we're going to have to go through and triple check some of our setup IDs. So have your federal EIN, your state identification numbers, have those in front of you. And any other pertinent information about your company, the owner of the company, bank account routing numbers so that you can set up your direct deposit. And once you have that data in front of you, we're ready to go into QuickBooks. So just a moment. And I'm going to switch so that we can see my QuickBooks. Again, this is QuickBooks Online. We've done a whole series of how to get data from QuickBooks Desktop into QuickBooks Online. And we're running with that in mind. We're going to go down here to payroll. That's the whole topic for today, and employees. In here, you can see I only have 3 employees. That's small company, only have 3. We only have 3. But look at this, I get a little yellow warning sign. Something didn't transfer with Dewey. But look, so much else did. This is with that inherent migration from desktop to online. So much is already done because it's taking the data from my QuickBooks Desktop use of QuickBooks Payroll. Again, we're not talking about getting data from some third party. This is from QuickBooks' built-in data, QuickBooks Payroll. Let's click on Dewey. You see, none of our employees are officially set up. The data is here. We just need to go through and check it. Then you can see the basic data for Dewey is in here. When do we pay Dewey? We've got different options. Some we pay monthly, some we pay weekly. You can see Dewey's pay data is in here. Dewey didn't have any extra deductions. W-4 form is all filled out. Oh, look at that. It was Dewey's birth date. Maybe I just didn't have that on my other file, but let's enter that in now, accurate to the real world. Okay, yep, I had to go in and enter one piece of data. Done. But everything else is taken care of. My employees are already filled out. And you know how I knew to go looking on Dewey? For one thing, you always triple check payroll. Also, very conveniently, there was that little yellow button that is no longer there. I'm pretty sure we're all set up here. I would recommend for you always triple check, but for the sake of this hour-long class, I'm going to go, yep, we're all set. Well, what else might have to be set up? And that's why QuickBooks has Overview. Now, once you are fully set up with payroll, the overview will just be general data to keep you updated. But right now, since I'm still in the setup process, this is my setup overview. And you can see I've already got one box checked off. Your team's 2022 payments are already ready. What do we mean our 2022 payments? Well, let's investigate. Just click the little pencil. And you can see I originally had 4 employees. Terminated Terry isn't here anymore. Literally, he's not with the company anymore. And so we had dismissed him from our other company file. But the data still comes over just to show he was a teammate, but now he's been turned off. And you can see the people who were paid in 2022, yes, yes, and yes, their data has come over. Where? Okay. Absolutely a legitimate question. Look at our employees again. We have 3 employees. Where did their prior pay data come in? I'm going to be able to show it to you in a report later, but right now I can go to the magnifying glass, my most recently entered transactions, and look here. Mr. Rex Weekly is right there. That is one of our employees, and there is one of the checks. Why doesn't it say paycheck? Well, that is a limit that we're going to run into. QuickBooks has generated a perfect transaction to represent a payroll check. It's just using the simple check form. But look, QuickBooks did all of this for me for each individual paycheck I had in the past. So they're all here, and we will get to see them again. But let's go back to overview. So I guess we are all set up. Let's just jump down to the next setting. This is the beautiful part of setting up QuickBooks Payroll. Let's click Start. Just move down to the next option. Now, here, what QuickBooks is saying is it was easy for QuickBooks to bring over federal, state data. QuickBooks learned how to take those items, your payroll items list, and turn it into something that QuickBooks Online understands. But here was kind of a rogue item, XYZ allowance. We had that as an item in desktop, and now QuickBooks is going, I'm not sure what to do with that. That's why it's popped up here. If QuickBooks has a question about how to map your old data to your new data, instead of just not telling you, it gives you a special place that says, pay attention to this. So we're going to go in here and just check down each checkbox. What makes sense? Well, is this allowance something we're going to reduce our employees' checks with? No. Allowance is some type of earning, a way to increase checks. So it falls into that category. Well, then can we further explain what this allowance is doing in the real world? Yes. It's an allowance. And that is something built in to QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks goes, we have everything arranged now. Thank you for your input. Save. You might get in here and see 2 or 3 of these and just align them as best you can with those few simple drop downs, and QuickBooks will know where to go from there. Well, that wasn't too hard. Check, check, check. Your business info is complete. Well, what is that? Always triple check payroll. Let's click the pencil to find out. This is just your basic data. And again, it's pulling right from your desktop data. If any of this isn't filled out, go ahead and finish it now. Now, mine says it was all filled out because it was. But if yours tells you you're not yet finished, the button will say finish up. It will ask you to finish. Mine shows I'm complete. I move down to the next. Finish adding your team. Well, my 3 employees, my employees I've had for quite some time, Dewey, Rex, and Brian, they have all 3 transferred over. But just this week, we hired in a new guy. You're going to do that eventually, right? Hire someone new. Let me show you how to add that. Either now, when we're first setting up, or this applies to weeks or months from now when you get your next new employee. Let's add one. And we're going to have to go through and set up a full employee. This is what it looks like to set up one from scratch. Notice, here's the big comparison. I didn't have to do this for my existing employees. That is the benefit of migrating. So I'm going to flash through this data. John is my new employee. John Wick, definitely one of my favorites. He's really come in there as a great employee. We're going to give him an email designation. Wouldn't we put in his work email? No. Why not? Because we want to welcome him to QuickBooks Workforce. That's the key idea here. QuickBooks Workforce is included with any paid subscription to QuickBooks Payroll. It's your employees' work portal. This is where they can log in on their own. They're not getting in your QuickBooks. They're getting into QuickBooks Workforce, a separate feature. That's where they can check their time off, their pay stubs, their W-2s, or reprint any of these, see any of their breakdowns of how they're paid. It's really good to be able to invite our employees there. And I would recommend use a personal email, because what happens if John isn't working with us in 3 or 4 years and he gets audited or wants to buy a home? He's going to want access to all of his prior pay data, and it would be easier for him to just log back in at any time and have that data. Continue just accurate data for John. I'm going to fill in data that makes sense, but this isn't going to be the same data you would put in. You would put in your employees' data, your business's data. And then we're going to fill out the W-4 form. So when John hires in, he would fill one of these out. Well, oh, you know what? I think I filled something out just a moment ago wrong. Hire date. I put him back in 2015. I don't know what I was doing there. Let's try that again. 03, 15, 20, 22. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. He just recently got hired in. Now let's enter his W-4 form. Since he just got hired in, QuickBooks assigns him the appropriate W-4 form, because W-4 forms changed a lot in 2020. So let's put in his address. And fill out the rest of his data. Placerville, California, 95667. And then social security number. This is something John gives us in his W-4. So don't be worried about having to run around and find this. He should have given it to us. All right, it looks like all the personal info is in. So let's shrink that down, kind of move it out of the way, and follow down with federal forms. Now, if John fills anything out extra, we would select that here. We don't have to put anything in here. It just depends on what he filled out. All right, there's the federal form. Well, what if you have state forms? Some states do, some states do not. If your state requires it, it'll show up here and give you options. California has that option. And any exemptions. Most companies won't have these exemptions, but they are available, and you can see a few that are specific to my state. QuickBooks is smart like that. Okay, so we've gone through and we filled out all of his withholding data. Now, how often do we pay John? Well, you see, if I click the drop down right now, I've already got a monthly schedule and a weekly schedule. You know where those came from? Desktop. I already had them set up. So I'm going to assign him to the monthly schedule because that's what's happening in the real world. That's what we do in QuickBooks. Now, how much do we pay John and how do we track them? There's a couple of different ways you could start, based on hourly, based on salary, or only commissions. Here's something really neat about salary in QuickBooks Payroll. You get to put in their average, or I would say default hours. If you're one of those offices where all 10 people, everyone works salary, everyone does 40 hours a week, it's always the same, then you can set up QuickBooks to auto run payroll whenever you want it to, every week, every 2 weeks, once a month. Auto run payroll for 40 hours. Everything is the same, and it will auto run it for you, just over and over and over. There's no input needed if everyone is working salary, everyone's have the same hours, everyone has the same deductions. Makes it very easy. Or in our case, we're going to do hourly, and we're going to put them in at $25 an hour. Is that the only way we could possibly increase his check? Oh, for sure not. Well, what about holiday pay? Eventually there could be a holiday. Or what if he ever gets sick? We should be able to implement those as other ways he could get paid. And in this case, like me in college, I had a job where I had 3 different pay rates. It just depended on what position I was working that day and what I was doing. So in this case, gardening, that is the other task, or just the second hourly rate. Are second hourly rates required? No, just depends on what your company does. And then common pay types. Well, eventually he could get overtime. It doesn't mean he's going to get every week. It's an option. Holiday pays. Well, eventually there could be a holiday, and a holiday is where the business would usually be open for everyone, but because of this religious or state or social holiday, it's closed that day. Could even just be the owner's birthday. Well, none of these others apply in our situation, so I think we're all set with common pay types. What about time off policies? If I go down here to sick pay, you can see I've already got 2 policies in here. Those came through from desktop. And so I'm going to assign him to the 80 hours. I've already got it built in. Great. If I wanted to, I could start a new one, because depending on how many years people work, they get different policies, right? You can have multi-layered different options. I'm assigning one of them right now, 80 hours to John. And how many does he have right now? 72. This will have to come from your internal paperwork. Okay, great. There's his time off policies. Are there any other possible ways we could pay John? Maybe. Let's go down here. What about cash tips? Or maybe you work for a house of worship. Or maybe you've got to deal with group life or S-Corp owners' health insurance. Bereavement pay? I mean, no one wants to provide that to their employees because they don't want that situation to pop up, but we also want to care for our employees. So maybe it's an option we hope we never have to use. You could turn that on. Save. So that is every way we could increase John's check. Now, what about any way we would deduct from John's check? Well, that's a different story. Let's add a deduction. And deductions are broken up into 2 separate groups. There's either a deduction where they are volunteering for it or contributing towards it, or there's one where some state agency or other agency is saying this person must have extra withheld. We're not talking about taxes here. QuickBooks actually has that all figured out on its own. This is just on top of taxes. Well, I'm going to quickly go through and add a deduction contribution. And if I swing over here, drop down, health insurance, that was already set up in desktop. Great. I could just click. There we go. How much does he have deducted? Let's do $50, flat amount. And is there any company contribution? In this case, sure, we do. We contribute a flat amount. And there are lots of options. Do you have to hit these exact same buttons? No, just lots of options. Save. And there we go. Now there is a deduction set up for him. Let's click done. Any other deductions we would layer in through that same window. Now, how do we want to pay John? This is really a question of how does John want to get paid? Direct deposit, that makes a lot of sense because direct deposit comes with any paid subscription to QuickBooks Payroll. And you have options. Your employee can choose to have direct deposit into a single account, but they do need to give you that data, the account and routing number, get it from your employee. It can go into a split between two accounts. Now you just have to enter both of those accounts and routing numbers. Or you can split between a single account and the rest onto a paper check. That's a lot of options. Or all of it onto a paper check. In this situation, that's what I'm going to rely on. Otherwise, if you wanted to do direct deposit, enter that account and routing number for your employee. A few more details. What's their birthday? And then how much have you paid John so far this year? Well, that doesn't actually matter for a new employee. We've never paid John. And for our other employees, this was already filled out because it came from the desktop merge. So we're all set here. Done. Says we need more information about his prior pay. Well, I guess we will enter that now. And we'll just say, no, we haven't paid him. Did you pay John from the beginning of the year till now? No. Wait for that to load, and then continue. Aha, there it is. And it shows that we could jump in and finish up now with our team. Maybe we have another employee. Always brings us back to that setup, but everything looks good to me. We have our original 3 plus Johnny is new, and we're all set. Let's continue. We'll again be able to go back and continue through our process. This is going to say, hey, let's look at your tax data. But the nice thing is because I already had it set up in desktop. Remember, we were using desktop payroll before and we transferred to online. All that data is here for me as well. What company type? Just pick what is ever accurate for your company. We are an LLC with an owner. Great, simple. Move forward. Now your federal data. I already had that plugged in desktop and it appears for me here. That merge saves time. And the rest of the data is accurate again because I already had it filled out, but if you're setting up new, you would go through and apply these as they apply to your company. Continue. And now state data. State data gets more complex because what if your business has 2 or 3 different states it's in? That it has offices in multiple places. Or what if you have employees who are working from other states? Because you put in those addresses for your employees or those addresses for your work sites, QuickBooks already knows to anticipate, to ready those state tax forms for you. But in my case, our workplace and our employees are all in California. So I only have one set of tax forms. And all of that data is here available for me. And for the most part, it's pre-filled out because I had it filled out in desktop. Done. All right, looks like we're going to go through and be able to look at our prior payroll history now. Continue. Remember, I told you those checks were in QuickBooks already, and they are. And here is a breakdown of each of those checks. That is some great data. And that's why you would want to have that What did you come from desktop with? What does your reports from desktop look like? Because that way you can easily compare and contrast your report to this window. But it looks like everything is perfect, so let's continue. QuickBooks will take a minute. That's a lot of data. What if I'm ready to run my payroll right now? Jump into Pay My Team. But we have a couple more things that we want to set up. So let's continue with our setup. And again, it just keeps bringing us into the next window. I didn't have to anticipate what window to go to next. I just fill out what I'm on right now, accurate and honest, click next, continue, finish, and it moves for me. Here we're going to establish our bank account and routing number. Now, if you're already using QuickBooks Online Banking, this is a snap. You're just going to put in, I'm a real business. You're not money laundering for a drug lord. You are a real person. You have a real ID. You have a real social security number. You are a real company. You are going to pay your taxes. And you have a real bank account. And just check those simple boxes and QuickBooks will ping your bank will respond. It may take a day or 2 or 3 to get this. It depends on your bank and how you fill out this data. It's very simple personal data. And it says here, it takes you 5 minutes. Let's stretch that out and say you're unprepared and it takes 8 or 10. Still not too long, but this is how you can get direct deposit set up. Just do it a couple of days before you're ready to run for payroll, because your bank might require security checks and QuickBooks needs to be able to work with you on that. So make sure to give it time. Well, if you don't have a 401k yet for your company, you can explore that option here. Keyword there is option. This is something you can work with QuickBooks on if you'd like, not required. So for right now, I am going to skip that. But then there's the connect your bank. That's the window I skipped out of. Remember, I did not finish that. I'd be able to jump into it right here. And to officially e-sign your tax forms, you have to actually have that bank connection, because that's how you're going to get direct deposit and how you're going to get QuickBooks to take care of your taxes, which I'll show you here before the end of the video. Once you have connected your bank account, the next button down here would say, finish or finish next step. When you click on that, QuickBooks is just going to say, okay, we need you, a real person, to speak to one of us, a real person. And there are options of how you want to complete these forms, whatever's convenient for you. Again, this is another reason to give it 2 or 3 days before you're supposed to run payroll, just so you can get all these forms filled out and the connections made. Now, I don't have a real company. I don't have a real bank account, so I can't actually fill that out. But we're far enough along that we continue the next really important step, which is settings. Go to the gear icon, and now that we've got payroll set up, we can go back and check or critique or audit our settings. The top quarter or maybe top half is all about your taxes, stuff we just filled out. What if our state tax data changes? Find your specific state, because if you had multiple, they'd be in here different. Find that state, go over to the right, click the edit button, change what you need to. The update will go forward. What if you want to sign up for that? Everyone is salary, everyone has the same payroll. You can sign that auto payroll up right here. Jump through the hoops and QuickBooks will show you whether you're eligible or not. Tax forms, this is a great one. Do you want QuickBooks to automatically pay on time and automatically file your forms for you? I think everyone is saying, yes, that sounds like a lot of stress off my back. You can do that right through here. But again, you have to have that real world bank connected, the same one you need for direct deposit. And I'll follow up on more detail with this in just a few moments. You can also address, how does QuickBooks contact you? How do you contact them? Early pay. This is a new feature. QuickBooks keeps adding more value to their product with payroll. Early pay. You ever have an employee come to you and say, hey, you know what, my car got towed. That's terrible, right? And they say, I really need like $300 right now to go get my car out, to Uber to go get my car. Can you front me some money? Oh man, that is always such a hard conversation to have with an employee. For one thing, it's embarrassing for them, and it's kind of odd for you. And then it puts a lot of tension on trying to figure out how does that work with payroll. Those days are no more. Because with early pay, remember how I told you you're setting your employees up to have access to QuickBooks Workforce, their portal they can log into to see their payroll data and their sick and time off. That's also where they could go to request early pay, not from us as the employer, but directly from QuickBooks. And so when they say, hey, QuickBooks, I need $300, QuickBooks is the one who works directly with them to loan them money, not from us, not from our company, but from QuickBooks. And so I don't even know the employee got that early advance because it doesn't affect me in any way. That is a discussion between them and Intuit, and it's a loan from Intuit to them. And it goes through and shows them how they get, I think, like a 14 days, 0 interest payback. It's a really great feature to be able to enable your employees to get that advance if they need it, and doesn't affect you in any way. Also, you're going to want to make sure to update or check, again, payroll, always triple check your accountant routing number to make sure that that is the right number to take your direct deposit out of in the real world, or take tax payments out of in the real world. What if on top of direct deposit, you also want to print or handwrite checks? You can do that. But to turn on the feature for you to print your own checks from home or from the office, you need to go here to printing and turn the feature on. Because otherwise QuickBooks thinks you just want to print pay stubs. Well, that's what most people want. But to turn it to pay checks, I just have to change my toggle and then choose either 3 segments or 2 segments. I can run through an alignment operation and save. Now I am able to do direct deposit for my employees. Oops. I'm able to do handwritten checks for my employees, and I'm also to print my own paychecks for my employees. More options. Finally, it's always a good idea to look at our accounts. Pencil button to audit, to edit. And look here, in the real world, had I set up direct deposit, the real money would have left the real bank, but QuickBooks doesn't know yet which account on my chart of accounts is the right one. Because if I didn't set that up earlier, I need to set it up now. So I'm just going to go in and select my checking account. Continue. Great. Now, when we had desktop, everything came over as payroll liabilities. That's it. That's all it was. Our federal taxes, our state taxes, all of it was in payroll liabilities, one generic account. And I believe QuickBooks Online is going to fix that for us. Going forward, at least, QuickBooks is going to be able to track, I believe, this is what we're seeing here, is QuickBooks is going to track payroll liabilities, but then sub-account federal taxes, sub-account unemployment. And that could be really handy for us. Not a requirement again. Desktop worked just fine if everything was in one, but you have the option to break that down. All right, this looks good to us. And let's click done. We have gone through all of our setup. Now, how do we start to run payroll? I could go straight into my employees button, and I'm ready to run payroll now. But in desktop, when you would click run payroll, choose which, are we doing our monthly schedule or our weekly schedule? Continue. Once you got in here, there was a way to like right click on an employee and go into great detail about which customer and which account, which class. We would go right through here to fracture out all of that data across multiple parts of our QuickBooks. That doesn't work the same way. I didn't say it doesn't work, it doesn't work the same way. That's the biggest difficulty about transferring from desktop to online, is it's not broken, it's just different. So here's what is different. I cannot put in customers or classes specifically here. So instead, I have a great feature built into our employees section called the weekly timesheet. This is where we go to put in which employee's hours. Let's just say John. Okay, did John work all week? Who did John work with? Well, I guess I don't have any customers in here. Probably should have done that earlier. My apologies. But we can set up our new customer. Save. And so now these 8 hours, these 16 total hours, are specific to work on this project or this customer. And we can even say, how do we want payroll to track those hours? Regular pay. Great. Now, is there a specific product or service in QuickBooks that we want to provide? So if we ever run a report, we can track what they were doing. Do we want to make these hours billable? Billable means we want to show these hours on our customer's future invoice. There's all kinds of options. I don't have classes turned on in this company file, but if I did, there would be a drop down right here where I could designate the class as well. It's the same functionality as desktop. It's just you're doing this before you get into payroll. So you can remember payroll, we always triple check. You check it before you get into payroll, you put the detail in here, and then that data auto syncs with my payroll script. Now, for right now, just for the ease of data, I'm just going to step back away from here. I'm not saving any of this. But whatever I had saved, whatever I had set up for my employees, would show up directly into run payroll. So again, we're choosing one of these two because we might run these for different parts of our company. Continue. Here's the 3 employees that I have active on monthly. And now we're going to go through and fill out their data. Well, I have very little to fill out for Brian because he's salary. Oh, but wait, he did take some sick pay. I gotta use this scroll bar to go back and forth to see all the data. Oh, that's kind of annoying. Don't fret. We can customize our table. Let's click that. And you know what? Memo is just not helpful right now. So maybe I'll remove that. And I don't have any holidays this week, so I'll remove that as well. I didn't delete those options. That'd be like for bereavement. You hope you never use that. And so you can just turn that off your table and never see it until, you know, that unfortunate time you need to use it. Customize your table, turn it on, use it once, turn it back off. But now I see I'm paying out $6,000 in salary, $6,000. What if I add 8 hours of sick pay? Uh-oh, what's that going to do? Nothing. Nothing at all. Kind of nothing. The total amount is still $6,000 paid, but their salary dropped. No, they're not losing money. This is just the numbers way to show less of the 6,000 is coming from generic pay. Part of the 6,000 is consuming some of their sick hours. They're still getting their $6,000 worth of salary. It's just that some comes from sick pay. I get that question quite a bit from new users. Let's go in and let's throw in our 80 hours for our 2 hourly employees. Well, now, how did we get to, or get, I should say, get from 80 hours to 4,400? How did we get from 80 hours to 2,000? Great question. If you need that detailed information, click on either one of these pencil buttons and you'll learn about that employee's data. Lots of data about that employee. Here's all of the pay types involved, the amount of hours at rate, and how we got that number compared to their year to date. Okay, let's shrink that down and let's go to the next section. What about the taxes coming out for this employee? Here's every different type of tax being withheld. That's great data. What about me as an employer? I have like $336 that I have to pay. That's outlined here as well. Do I need to come into this window to run payroll? No, not at all. But this is for when we're trying to learn, how do these numbers make sense? Click that little pencil button. Always triple check payroll, make sure we have our right data selected up here. I know I don't, but we're just going to ignore that for a moment. And then preview payroll. This is much like the pencil button, but this preview is a little more generic. And in fact, you can see the return of the pencil buttons here. I have my general data in front of me, how many paper checks I'm choosing, because right, I don't have a real bank account. If I had direct deposit stuff, that would show up here. And I can even compare this payroll to the last payroll. You ever accidentally make a decimal marker mistake, right? You add a zero you shouldn't have. And so you're accidentally paying out 800 hours in a week. Oops. Or you're only paying someone 8 hours. That's a big difference. And this comparison catches that fast. But I think we're all set up. So I'm going to submit my payroll. And then, payroll is run and done. Woohoo! That wasn't too bad. And that little pop-up was just saying, hey, remember, you weren't signed up for direct deposit, so you need to get checks to your employees somehow. And because I went to the gear icon payroll settings earlier, I chose to turn on printing. So this no longer says just print pay stubs. It now says I can print my full paychecks. If that's the choice I would like, put my check stock in the printer, click print paychecks. If I'm just writing checks, look at the first check I'm about to write. Put that check number in, right? Pull it off of my number, put it in here, and I can even auto fill down. Oops, did I click that wrong? There we go. There's my 3 checks. Now here's the little magic part. A lot of people miss this. View payroll reports. Well, can't I go view a payroll report anytime I want? You're right, one at a time. And you could print, or you could download, or you could export, or you could email one report at a time. Just go to the left nav bar, click reports. But this is special, and you get it with every time you run payroll. This allows you to download 5 special reports. These are the ones that almost everyone's going to use. And if you just export this to Excel every time you run payroll, save it into the same file on your computer as you did last time, and you're going to have a wonderful set of Excel downloadable payroll documentation. Super easy. You won't even have to think, well, which forms should I keep? These are the 5 standard forms. Again, that's just down here at the bottom. All right, let's finish payroll. Great. Now it reminds me how long until my next payroll, because I've got that weekly. I'll run 4 weeklies in a month and 1 monthly. This lets me know when my next one of those is due. That's really handy. Let's go back to our employees section. Because now that we've run our first payroll, some updates have happened. Like John, we just walked through setting up John from scratch. Here is his pay section. That's everything we've already set up. I can adjust any of that, update his health insurance, update his usual deductions, update his sick or hourly. I can go through and update his profile data, which we didn't have before, update his employment data, which we didn't have before. And I can even look in here at his paycheck list. And there is his 1 paycheck. But if I go back to, say, weekly recs, we remember we saw his checks up here before. Those are regular checks. Notice the difference here between those checks and the payroll checks I just created, those regular checks won't show up in the paycheck list because they're not paychecks. So I have that date. It just doesn't show up in this window. Just something to be aware of. Well, now that we run payroll, we're probably going to run payroll a couple more times, and then we're going to have to pay taxes. That makes sense. As you run payroll over and over again, the amount you're withholding from your employees is going to increase, and then that's going to be due to someone. Most of it to the government. Let's go take a look at how QuickBooks tracks that for us down here in the taxes, payroll tax section. This is so good. Look here, we've got our upcoming payments, and then it shows us the date range of the accrual, meaning we're going to continue increasing amounts every payroll that's run. In fact, I don't think I'm going to run payroll again before the end of the month. So this is probably my final number. It's accruing till the end of the month, where I have others accruing through the end of the month. I have some accruing through the end of the year. Electronic payment. This is marvelous. This is QuickBooks saying, we have shouldered the responsibility for you. What responsibility? Of making sure your taxes get paid. You see, by the 30th, that's the cutoff date. No more taxes will accrue for March. That'll change. And between the 1st of March and the 15th of March, somewhere in there, my taxes are due to the federal government. Because it says electronic paying automatically here, I'm done. QuickBooks does the rest. What do you mean the rest? QuickBooks is going to fill out my 941 or my 944 for me and send it to the government. Well, when? Before 4/15. It's also going to take this amount of money out of my real bank account and send it to the government for me. When? Just a few days before the due date. Great. And it's going to do that for my California as well. Yep, because it says electronic. For my other unemployment for California, yep, because it says electronic. For federal, yep, because it says electronic. What if it doesn't? It might say manual. Okay, now you are on your own. What that means, manual is you might not have your electronic connection set up right. You might not have your direct deposit set up right yet. If it says manual, your responsibility is to get the money to the government before the 15th, to get the proper forms to the government. All of that would be outside of QuickBooks and my responsibility. Once I did that, again, if this said manual, there'd be a little button that would pop up over here that says mark as paid. I would go bear my responsibility, pay, file. Once it's done, come back, mark as paid, and QuickBooks will update. Well, how do I get mine to switch from manual to electronic? I will say that not all taxes do, most, not all taxes, most. So we're going to go up here to the gear icon, back to payroll settings. I showed this earlier, but I think I've caught people's attention now. Taxes and forms. I would go in here and automate taxes and forms. And any forms that can be automated will, and the rest will still say manual. Those will be up to me. That is massively helpful. Okay, but let's go down here to our chart of accounts. In our chart of accounts, we see, oh, look at how beautiful this is. Now, there is a little difficulty because some of the data that came from desktop only had one account called payroll liabilities. Everything we did, federal, state, everything just piled into that one account, which wasn't always super helpful. QuickBooks Online doesn't automatically group everything together, splits it out for you. Look how convenient this is. All my state stuff, broken out. My federal, broken out. Even my health insurance I set up is broken out. And this is so helpful because health insurance will not be tracked in QuickBooks with a alert that tells you when to pay it. You don't have that. That is up to me. I need to be able to work with the health insurance company to know when do I need to pay them. That's up to me. I need to know that. The taxes are tracked beautifully here, but for the non-tax, I need to track those myself. Create an Excel document, use a Post-it note. I need to know when this is paid. So this $100, it's in my bank account, but I want it to go to the good health insurance company. How would I do that? Well, we can go up to the New button. Or online banking, if you're using that, that works just as well. I don't have it set up in this company. But let's imagine I'm trying to write a check. Okay, I'm going to make sure QuickBooks is all set up and remembering what it's supposed to do. I'm going to refresh real quick. And we're going to write a check. In the real world, I have to create my check. And I'm going to write it to Good Health Insurance. Well, they're not yet in QuickBooks, so I will create them as a new vendor. Save. Now, when I write a check, it's going to be today. It's going to take money out of my checking account. Look at my checkbook. Check number 1034. Yep, that's right. Category. This is the what. When I spend this money, what account is it going to affect? What reason am I spending this money? It is indeed my health insurance. My health payroll liability health insurance. How much? Well, there was $100 over there. And that's what I owe to Good Health Insurance. Save and close. See, I have to do these on my own. I'm just going to ignore my little warning. You probably shouldn't. I'm going to ignore my little warning. And look at that. That $100, 50 of mine, 50 of John's was set aside, collected here for me. That is tracking how much I owe. I just don't get this pop-up that says this is the date it's due by. But also look at all this great data I have split apart to track my taxes, my liabilities, and down here in payroll taxes as well. And QuickBooks automates a lot of this for us. Well, once we start paying, how do we track old filings? Or what about our 940s, our 941s, our 944s? That's what the filings button is all about. Now, I don't have any here, but as you go by month, quarter by quarter to the end of the year, it will start saying, 940, 941, 944 pending. And it'll show you these are, being ready to be filed. And then it will show you this was filed. So helpful. QuickBooks Online Payroll. Great tool. Really helps you keep track of how are you paying your employees? Where are we tracking that in QuickBooks? Tracking hours to specific customers or specific projects. Being able to track hours across different classes. You can do all that in the time section. And you have a beautiful way to track who do I owe money? And oftentimes, QuickBooks will bear the responsibility of making sure those forms and those fees get paid on time. I hope you enjoyed this class. This is a lot of fun to teach. Have a great day, a good week, and happy QuickBooksing.